Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the 道德经 by Lao Tzu. 千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Let us begin. Now, I would like to extend a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. And now, without further ado, let us get started with 道德经 33. The title for chapter 33 of the 道德经 is The Utmost Self. As usual, it comes to us as a title of 3 characters, where the first 2 characters encapsulate the meaning of the chapter. The first character, the one to the left, means doing the utmost that one can to fully commit to the Tao with sincere effort, sincere intent, doing all the necessary cultivational work to the utmost of one's abilities. The second character, the one in the middle, that is the character for self. This means the core of your spiritual being, the inner self. This is the you inside that is in charge of your thoughts, perceptions, and decisions. So, when we combine these 2 characters together, it is an expression that means your inner self is being fully engaged, and you are completely committed to fulfilling your spiritual destiny. So, we can say that it means doing the utmost from oneself, of oneself, and for oneself. So then, this is the ultimate practice of your own internal work. It means turning inward. It means you turn inward with absolute sincerity to uncover and actualize the unlimited potential that already exists within. So this is all about, first, understanding oneself, to know your own strengths and weaknesses, your pluses and minuses, and overcoming oneself. That is, to make lasting changes in all the areas we need to improve. Then there's contentment. And that is true fulfillment that comes from letting go of improper desires and finding contentment in the Tao, regardless of your circumstances. Then, determination. The journey that we're talking about here is not a journey for the day, the week, or the month, or the year. We're all in it for the long haul because it is literally the journey of a lifetime. There's foundation connected to this, and that means to establish and maintain a solid basis in the Tao, so we can always be certain of firm footing in everything we do. Lastly, it's about legacy. That means Tao cultivation is not just for us. It is a torch passed to us from ancient times that we are now passing on to other people, especially those who come after us. So this chapter points to one thing, and that is to bring yourself to your fullest potential. That is, you want to fulfill your nature, your true nature, fulfill your mind in terms of learning and understanding, and fulfill your authenticity to be who you truly are. We can do this through knowing or understanding yourself, mastering yourself, what Lao Tzu calls overcoming yourself. We can do it through knowing contentment, to settle yourself. And we can keep to the root or preserve your essence. So that is the meaning of the chapter title. Now let's take a look at the chapter itself. 道德经 33. Those who understand others are intelligent. Those who understand themselves are enlightened. Those who overcome others have strength. Those who overcome themselves are powerful. Those who know contentment are wealthy. Those who proceed vigorously have willpower. Those who do not lose their base endure. Those who die but do not perish have longevity. So, this chapter is relatively short, shorter than the other ones that we have studied recently. Despite being short, it has layers of meaning and a lot of depth. This is one of the most quoted chapters in the Tao Te Ching, so I think it is well worth our time to study it in depth. So looking at the patterns in the characters of this chapter in the ancient text, one of the most noticeable patterns is the repetition of the third character. We see it being repeated from line 1 all the way down to line 6. Now, line 7 and 8 also have the same character. For both of those lines, that character is the second from last character. So let me highlight all the repeating characters that I am talking about for all 8 lines to make them easier to see. So visually, you can tell it is the exact same character highlighted in red that is throughout the entire chapter, all 8 lines. This is the character 者. it is contextual. It can mean he who, or she who, that which, or those who for plural. In this case, it is the last one, those who. So you can see every English line in the translation starts with that. Every translation line begins with those who. So then we can examine the meaning of the lines from top to bottom. It is easy to see that the first two lines go together. They're both about understanding humans, and they point out the difference in what we observe of others and self-knowledge. And when we talk about self-knowledge, in the West, we often talk about the wisdom of know thyself. So that is what that line is also referring to. And by seeing that the first two lines go together, we can mark them with a sectional divider. Then, working further down, in the same way, we can see line 3 and line 4 go together. They're both about overcoming challenges. One of them, line 3, is about overcoming the challenges from others. And then followed by line 4, overcoming one's own challenge within. There indeed is a big difference between the external versus the internal. So we can draw another line to mark them as being together in one section. Line 5 and 6 go together as well. They talk about the Tao approach to life, being content and also being determined to proceed. So it looks like this. Now we can tell this chapter of 8 lines is actually 4 sets of 2 lines each, 4 couplets. The last 2 lines go together. They are the same length with 6 characters each, and they talk about what we can build spiritually that will last and withstand the test of time. One is a spiritual foundation that steadies us. The other, the last line, is a spiritual legacy that continues on. So we will come back to that. For now, just keep in mind that these are the 2 important things to conclude the chapter: a spiritual foundation for the here and now, a spiritual legacy for the future. So, with that sectional analysis out of the way, it is simpler because the structure of this chapter is quite simple. We can now go into the line-by-line analysis, starting with line 1. So I talked about this character, 者, meaning he who, she who, those who. This character is similar to the er or the ist suffix in English. For instance, walker is the one who walks. Runner is the one who runs. And you see many other examples swimmer, the one who swims, flyer, the one who flies. And the ist suffix is similar. For instance, artist is the one who creates art. Optimist is the one who is optimistic. So these all serve the same function. This character, when it appears in the ancient text, is usually translated as variations of the one who. Sometimes, depending on the context, it would be that which, the one that, they who, those who are, and that is the context for us. So moving on to the entire line. Line 1, those who understand others are intelligent. The 4 characters here, we can break them down. The first character is the character for know. To know, to understand, to be aware of. The second character is the character for person, singular, or people in the plural form, or persons. Then we have the character that we're translating as those who. And then finally, the last character there, the 4th character, that just means intelligent. This character is used quite a bit in the Tao Te Ching. It is not always intelligence. In the positive context, it is neutral, meaning that being intelligent can be positive or negative. So you can have a smart solution that benefits all, that would be positive. Or you can have a clever trick that deceives many, that will be negative. So putting all of these together, we can say the whole thing means those who are perceptive and observant. Those are the people that have that intelligence. What we would often describe as social intelligence, and people would also say it like street smart. They can figure out what others are thinking or feeling through their perception or observation. And they will then adjust their approach accordingly. If, in an intelligent way, they perceive that someone is not in a good mood, they may not want to pick that moment to ask for a favor. So, as I said, this is what we may describe as a kind of social intelligence. It applies to our interactions with one another. Now, we definitely can also see that not everybody has this kind of intelligence. Sometimes people are lacking in the intelligence of understanding others. And we see how people may demand to be understood and get upset when they don't get that understanding. So rather than to understand others, they want others to understand them. How can we tell when people are like that? Well, you know, in conversations, they will appear to listen, but they're actually thinking about what they want to say. And this will not deepen understanding for them about others, and we can also see how they tend to pass judgment on others based on their personal experience because they're very self-centric. You may hear things from them like, oh, you did that only because you. That's a kind of judgment that they pass. They may say, oh, you're just trying to this and that. Another form of passing judgment. Or they may focus on themselves. Oh, listen, when I was your age, I did this or that. Or they may say, I remember when something like this happened to me, and here's what I did. Again, a focus on themselves instead of on what other people are saying. So what about the flip side? What would be a sign that you are at least making an effort to understand other people? This is a requirement in Tao cultivation, and the requirement is to understand other people first before seeking to be understood. A sign that this is happening would be empathetic, probing questions that you can ask other people. Rather than focusing on yourself, you may say things like, I can see you are stressed out. Can you tell me about what's going on? The benefit of this practice in Tao cultivation is that being understood will happen naturally when you demonstrate your genuine understanding of someone else. Next slide. So, understanding others in terms of personality and character. I want to emphasize that because it is more than just watching what other people say or do. It's not just perception and observation. It is also the understanding that you derive based on the perception or observation. For example, knowing when a family member's bad mood is due to exhaustion. They're not really mad at you, not really upset with you. They're just tired. They're just worn out. So that's useful to know. All of these are manifestations of an intelligent mind. They all have their practical uses in daily life. Another example, knowing when a child is acting up to seek attention. They're not being bad, quote unquote bad, or disobedient. They are just wanting more of your attention. So knowing that can be very useful. It tells you the true cause so that you can address it. Or knowing when a loved one is silent because he or she needs a moment. They're not really ignoring you. They're not neglecting you. They just need a moment. It's temporary. It will pass. Now, in this chapter, Lao Tzu points out that these are intelligent behavior. These exhibit and demonstrate an intelligence in dealing with people. But Lao Tzu also wants us to keep in mind that these manifestations are all outward, and they are not the same as internal, self-reflecting intelligence. There is a big difference. Now, just because it is different, it doesn't mean that we should then ignore the outside world or other people. In Tao cultivation, Tao cultivators take other people's opinions into account. So, one common misconception that I come across from time to time is when people say, "Why should I care what other people think?" So, on the face of it, some people may think that this is wisdom and that it's liberating. In the Tao, it is seen as part of the balance. That is, it is given the appropriate weight, not too much and not too little. When you give them too much weight, other people's opinions, you become a slave to what they think of you. When you give too little weight, you ignore something that other people see that we may not be able to see ourselves. Therefore, balance is key. Next line. Line 2 says, "Those who understand themselves are enlightened." So to explore this line, I want to first begin with the last character. The last character of the previous line means intelligence, and I mentioned that it can be a neutral quantity. It can be intelligence in the positive sense, but it can also be what Lao Tzu would call cleverness, shrewdness, calculating, etc. Here, this character, translated as enlightened, it is pronounced Ming, composed of two radicals. A radical is part of a character. The part on the left is the character for the sun. The part on the right is the character for the moon. Both the sun and the moon are sources of illumination. And therefore, when these are together in one character, it is sometimes mistranslated as bright. So that's actually a bit of a distortion. There is a character specifically for bright that you see in this line, 亮. So not at all the same or similar. The actual meaning of this character is clear or clarity. When you apply clear or clarity in the spiritual context, we're talking about spiritual clarity, which just means wisdom or enlightenment. So that's why the character is translated in that specific way. So now we look at the entire line. Line 2. Those who understand themselves are enlightened. So the four characters, when we break them down, are similar to the previous line. The first one is the character for self. The second one, same as the first character in line 1, just means know or understand. The third character is the same as before, those who. Then, the final character, the fourth character, as we just talked about, is clarity in the spiritual sense. So those who know others are merely intelligent. This is another level above. Knowing yourself is a greater kind of intelligence than knowing others. Understanding others is easier. Understanding oneself is more difficult. This is because most people know how to observe others. relatively few know how to turn the gaze inward to observe themselves. Indeed, as we go through life, we encounter many people who do not understand themselves all that well. Our usual expression is that we describe them as being lacking in self-awareness. And what might that be like? Let's talk about some real-life examples of what you have seen as you go through daily life. One common example is people who blame others or who become defensive. They don't apologize. They shift the responsibility away from themselves. We've definitely seen people like that, and perhaps in the past, we've been that way. Another common example is those who are not aware of social cues. They don't know what they're doing, so they ignore social norms. For instance, they may be interrupting conversations. So without really a regard for what they're doing, that may be impacting other people. And that's generally true. People who lack self-awareness do not see how their words or actions may be affecting other people. And because of that lack of awareness, they may overestimate themselves. They may think they are experts, and even when the evidence is suggesting otherwise, they persist in that belief. Another way to see it, this is rather common, is that people who are not self-aware will repeat their mistakes. The same patterns that turn out to be negative, they are still engaged in it. Some sort of destructive behavior that has not worked out well for them, they go back to that. They repeat that. And lastly, blind spots. So sometimes people are not self-aware. They don't know that they're starting to feel stressed out or overwhelmed. This can lead to sudden outbursts. So we see these examples all the time in daily life, and by becoming more aware of these examples, we can in turn become more self-aware. To be more self-aware is wisdom. And the emphasis here is in-depth understanding of yourself. That is the deeper kind of wisdom. So one example that comes to mind is that if you understand and know yourself, to be aware of what your buttons are. When I mean buttons, I mean the buttons that other people push to get under your skin. If you know what those triggers are, it helps you be a calmer person, or it can help you regain composure. So, some additional examples. When you understand why a remark can set you off, something you are sensitive about, a raw spot, an exposed nerve. Understanding why you lose your patience sometimes, it's better to be aware of when you are doing that, rather than to justify your lack of patience, become aware of it, and know the cause. Understand why so often you have this irrational urge to win an argument, What do I put the win in quotation marks? Because as we have studied the Tao, we have come to know that you don't actually win. When there is an argument and you persist in it, you don't win at all. The only real way to win is to stay above the argument and not get dragged down to its level. So, in your friendships and relationships, having this kind of wisdom means you more easily understand yourself in terms of, for instance, if you fear being abandoned or ignored, knowing that about yourself helps you adjust your feelings and understand why some emotions come up. Another example is to understand why you get frustrated with repeating patterns that other people cannot see. You may be frustrated in saying that, well, look, everybody, isn't this obvious? We're just repeating our past mistakes. That can be very frustrating. To be more self-aware is to have insights into why that happens. And it can also be useful to realize why sometimes you have failed to set proper personal boundaries. So then what happens after that? When people cross a line, you may realize that, oh, it is because I did not clearly define where that line should be. So this is so important that I want to ask everyone to reflect on a few questions, to think about how well you know yourself. To what extent do you think you are free of self-deluding beliefs? That's important because it is one of the hardest things to root out of your mind. And a follow-up question on that may be, would those closest to you agree or disagree with you in your self-assessment? Another question. To what extent do you feel content with life? That is sometimes more difficult than it may seem at first. For instance, do you find yourself tempted by free stuff that we all see from time to time? If that becomes excessive, it can indicate a lack of real contentment, the lack of knowing sufficiency that you already have enough. And to what extent do you exercise discipline on yourself? How often do you slack off? Give yourself permission. One common misconception that I come across associated with this is the saying from people. They say, look, I'm a human being, not a human doing. So perhaps you have heard the same expression as well. This is both a true statement and it is also a way to justify not doing what you know you should do. So, insight about the self goes really deep to see the root cause. It is important because everybody, you wield the power to decide. You should not give this power to external authorities, nor should you give it up to the lure of material wealth. no matter what happens in your world, you always have the power to assign the meaning that it holds for you. So, if you come across, experience a setback, the meaning you assign to it is that it shows there are lessons for you to learn. If there is a tragedy that happens, the meaning is that it reminds you of how fragile and how precious life can be. So, you wield the power. Never give it up. The conclusion of all this is that when you know others, you keep yourself from being led by others' emotions. When you know yourself, well, that keeps you from being led by your own emotions. So, you can tell this is a profound topic. I would like to put it all together in one slide to compare and contrast, to drive home the point that Lao Tzu is trying to make. You see two columns here: understand others and understand yourself. To understand others is to focus your gaze outward. You see the truth about people. We talked about how this means you possess social intelligence. Understand yourself is turning that gaze inward to see the truth about yourself. This we can call personal wisdom. Wisdom about the self. So, understanding others, for instance, know their strengths. Understand others in terms of their strengths, or what are they good at. It is intelligence, it is smart, because it tells you what kind of help you can request from them. This leads to effective collaboration. So it is definitely smart to know that. On the other hand, knowing yourself, be aware of your own strengths without going overboard into hubris. What are your talents? What comes easily to you? There are talents you possess that come much more easily for you than for other people. This informs you how you can best contribute to the world. So, this is wise, not just intelligence, because this goes toward the purpose of your life. This is not just effective collaboration, this is life purpose. So what about the flip side? Weaknesses. Knowing others, understanding others in terms of weaknesses. Where are they vulnerable? Where do they need help? It is smart to know that. It is sensitivity to the needs of others. Where are people oblivious, unaware? What do you see? What can you see that they do not see? This is the intelligence of observation. So, let's take it up a level to yourself. Be aware of your own weaknesses. This is the wisdom in knowing, accepting, acknowledging. Where do you fall short? Where can you really use some help? This is wise because it informs you about the resources you are missing. Same with the perception. What are your blind spots? What are you not paying attention to, but should? This goes toward making changes to neglected faults. It is a higher level than just intelligence because it is more difficult to ask someone to see into his own blind spots is always difficult. So for you or me to look into our own blind spots, for some, it basically becomes impossible. Those that are sufficiently aware to do it, they possess wisdom indeed. Next, know what people think, how they think. Know their motivations. Why do people do what they do? This is smart because it helps you anticipate their actions. What are the habitual patterns they follow? This is smart because it helps you anticipate a sequence of events. What comes next? Now let's take it up a level to wisdom. Mastery of your own thought process. Definitely more difficult. Definitely not just observation. This is being aware of the way you think. What motivates you? What drives you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What excites you? What makes you work so hard and enjoy it? Why is this wise? Because it goes toward your mission in life. More than just your purpose, your goal, you're on a mission. What is that mission? And to help you accomplish that, it is also the self-awareness of good habits and bad. What are the things that I do habitually that help me toward my mission in life? And what are some things that I do that take me away from it? This is wise because it helps you adjust and align yourself. So we can't talk about knowing what people think without also touching on knowing how they feel, happiness and sadness, worries. So we're talking about what are the things that please and displease other people. What are the joys and regrets that they experience? Knowing that helps you fine-tune what you say and do when you interact with them. What they worry about, what are they concerned about, what are their fears, what do they put off, what do they avoid? All extremely useful to know in your social intelligence. So then, the flip side, the deeper, higher level, yourself. Mastery of your own emotions. And when we talk about your own joy, your own regrets, the questions to ask would be, what exactly in life are the things that bring you lasting joy? What are your regrets? When you know the answers to these questions from your self-awareness, you have the ability to make accurate course corrections in your life. And therefore, that is wise. And last but not the least, let's talk about understanding your own anxieties. What makes you anxious? What keeps you up? What makes you hesitant? What is holding you back? What are you afraid of? Knowing what these are will give you the wisdom of facing them, confronting them, and making meaningful transformations in your existence. So looking at these two columns together, the difference between being intelligent and being wise will become clear. Then we can appreciate what Lao Tzu says. Those who understand others are intelligent. Those who understand themselves are enlightened. Let us go to line 3. Line 3 says, those who overcome others have strength. So I want to focus on the first two characters. To conquer others requires strength. And the context is force, aggression, speed. In other words, violence. People have a tendency to admire this physical kind of display. Now, similar to line 1, where we say those who understand others are intelligent, here we're saying those who overcome others have physical strength. It is not a bad thing, just as being intelligent, being able to understand other people is not a bad thing. Consider the fact that we have books that teach people how to become more fit and how to communicate with others, all because these skills are useful. These are the kind of capabilities that we can develop, so they're not necessarily negative. In the Tao, we see this in the proper context, the proper perspective, and we note the limits. Physical strength is transient. It is impermanent. It doesn't last. Circumstances change, roles can reverse. In time, because of age, one will experience loss of physical strength. In terms of social dynamics, one can be demoted and no longer has the strength represented by a position. And strength in terms of physicality, overcoming others, conquests, it can create consequences, long-term damage, retributions. Retributions can go back and forth, the cycle of vengeance. So, in terms of changes in situation, think about how the kid who used to be bullied decides to strike back. So then things will shift around. Or a bigger bully shows up. So the former bully becomes the bullied instead. It's transient. Prey and predator, they can shift roles in human society. And what if the weakness that used to be in the target that was being bullied turns into strength? Then the situation will reverse. So the limitation noted by Tao sages is that external manifestations, not constant. But internal manifestation, now that can be lasting. Which takes us to line 4. Line 4 says, those who overcome themselves are powerful. So we'll break down the 4 characters. The first character is the character for self, same as before in line 2. The second character is win, overcome, to triumph. The third character is the same as the third character in the previous 3 lines. Those who. And then the final character, the last character, is powerful. So, what Lao Tzu is trying to express here is that being physically strong cannot compare to having the strength of character. For instance, to overcome yourself in terms of procrastination, your lack of motivation, your resistance or inertia to taking actions. We have all experienced how difficult that can be. I think most of us have that experience. And there's also addictive behavior in general. Even if it's just addiction to doom scrolling, that happens. There's also addiction in terms of substance abuse, which can be a serious detriment in anyone's life. So overcoming that is also far from easy. There's the tendency to self-sabotage due to fears. So to overcome that tendency, that takes true spiritual power as well. And that's what Lao Tzu means by powerful. Lastly, insecurity, negative self-image, leading to overcompensating arrogance. So in psychology, this is a much studied subject because it is so commonplace. Someone who comes across as arrogant may actually be extremely insecure, have an extremely negative self-image. To overcome that, once again, is far from easy. Therefore, to conquer oneself requires authentic spiritual power. For example, it can mean when you sense within yourself that anger is rising, but then your ability to overcome yourself means your mind is not automatically getting carried away. That can be difficult. Another example, you feel desire arising within yourself. Could be for anything. But if you are in control of your mind, you can make sure the mind is not being pulled along, being dragged along by the desire. Yet another example, there's fear in your heart. But your mind does not flee from it. There's no panic. There's no being paralyzed with terror. Your mind not fleeing from it will have the ability to stand your ground mentally, to face the fear, to understand where that fear is coming from or what it is trying to tell you. So, last example there, habit arises, but your mind does not give in to the pattern. You feel the habitual pattern kicking in, and you sense yourself going through the motions. Being aware of this, you can overcome it. You can decide, should I really be doing this pattern at this time? So these all follow the same idea, the same concept. Whatever it is that you feel within, temper, fears, or vanity, at the moment of the strongest impulse, you're still able to restrain yourself. At the moment when previously you would have erupted in rage, you're able to pull back. So this is all internal work. To conquer others is the application of force externally against other people. But to conquer yourself is the use of discipline and clear intent. This doesn't mean that you don't feel those emotions that we named. Being human, there's still going to be anger, there's going to be fear, impulses come and go. The difference is that they remain under your control. That is your self-mastery. So just like before, this is so often quoted from the Tao Te Ching. This is such a fixture of culture. It is reflected in Eastern and Western traditional wisdom. It is important. So I want to set up overcoming others and overcoming the self side by side to really compare and contrast. Just like we did before with knowing others and knowing yourself. Starting with anger. This is perhaps the obvious one. Those who overcome others, they use anger to get their way. There is an old saying for lawyers. It goes like this. When you have the law on your side, pound the law. When you do not have the law on your side, pound the table. To pound the table is to use strong emotions to compensate for the lack of reasoning or facts. This is someone weaponizing anger. So, what about anger for those who overcome the self? Restrain their anger, not weaponize it, not use it as a bludgeon. Anger still happens. You're still human after all. But you recognize it and you can manage it. Restraint means you are still in control. And you can use the anger to motivate yourself. That is the wisdom of transformation. You transform the energy of the anger into something that is more constructive. Next, we talk about the strength of those who overcome others, keep others under control. This is external strength manifesting as the obsessive need to control everything. It has to be your way or the highway. This is using force and coercion externally. This is described by people when they talk about you as being too controlling, and sometimes they use terms like control freak. But what about control in terms of overcoming the self? Keeping themselves under control, unlike the obsessive need to control others or everything, this is the directed, intentional self-control. This is knowing that you are the master and not a slave of your whims and desires. This is mastering the self. Self-mastery. And then we also see that those who overcome others apply pressure against other people. They use leverage. The leverage can be position, like the boss making a demand, or enticement. If you do this, you get that. And both come around to you have to do it because of so-and-so. Those who overcome others by applying pressure against them, they get people to do what they want. The saying that we have in the West is they do this by hook or by crook. They are the manipulator. So, when you map this to the self, the pressure against others transforms into discipline on yourself. Applying that discipline is to get leverage on oneself. And what I mean by this is when you remember your own higher aspirations in life and how you want to work toward them, that gives you the leverage you need to bring your internal self into alignment. That is the sense of mission that you have in life. I'm here in this world, living this life in order to accomplish so-and-so. And therefore, I don't have extra time to waste on those trivial, insignificant, squabbling events external to me. That's what it means. And then I want to talk about success for those who overcome others with external manifestation of strength. Their standard for success is that when other people give in to them, they have succeeded. They define success in terms of what others do, or what others fail to do if they acted to block them. What does success look like for someone who overcomes the self? They succeed when they come into alignment. They define success in terms of that internal alignment of their thoughts, your emotions, their purpose, their goals, aspirations, vision for the future, their dreams, their ideals. All become aligned as one. Then they succeed. Lastly, I want to talk about those who overcome others in terms of how they focus externally to outshout with louder volume, to project and use fear. So what I mean is they are bombastic. Their external expression is loud in volume. It can be wild in gestures and mannerism. So that is using external strength to try to get what they want. And when it comes to fear, well, those who overcome others will weaponize fear against other people to scare them into compliance. If you don't do this, then here's what's going to happen. That's what I mean by weaponizing fear. What if we map this internally to the Tao cultivator? Well, rather than to outshout other people with louder volume, a Tao cultivator is focusing internally to quiet the internal mental chatter. This is the internal self-talk. And the Tao cultivator will focus on making sure the self-talk is positive, life-affirming, and encouraging. And what about fear? Well, the Tao cultivator focuses internally to face their own fears, to master the fear. They recognize that fear is a natural alarm system. So they use the signal provided by fear wisely. This fear is coming up. Why? Because of so-and-so factors that present a risk. To understand how that works is to appreciate fear as an advanced warning system and to make use of it and not ignore it or turn away from it and disregard. So when we look at these two columns side by side, I think we have the same kind of understanding that we saw before with knowing others versus knowing the self. And we can appreciate what Lao Tzu says. Those who overcome others have strength. Those who overcome themselves are powerful. Moving on to line 5. Line 5 says, those who know contentment are wealthy. This is the Tao perspective on wealth that cuts right through material illusions. And this is for the reason that when one lacks contentment, one feels poor no matter how much one has. So, material possessions beyond the necessities of life do not make us happy. People may think the opposite. They may think wealth brings happiness. But we see example after example where this is simply not the case. We see how some sit on great fortunes, but then live in constant fear. They distrust everyone. They remain on guard. They spend each day feeling anxious. Their time is not their own. Their actions must be calculated. Without freedom, there is no joy. Without joy, no happiness. In the Tao, true wealth comes not from things, but from a sense of sufficiency, a feeling of gratitude. It is only with this inner ease can one act with clarity. And true wealth also comes from peace of mind, harmonious relationships. So, when the mind has the grounding of a solid relationship and is not empty, satisfaction comes easily. So, in order to illustrate this concept, I would like to share a story with everyone. It is called Wealth and Poverty. Once upon a time, in ancient China, there was a village at the foot of a mountain. The wealthiest among the villagers was the Jia family, who lived in a mansion. Not far from the mansion was a simple cottage, the home of the Yi family, which certainly did not have all the material resources that the Jia family had. The Jia family had a warehouse overflowing with grains, several horse carriages, and luxurious items inside their home. Senior Jia, the head of the family, would count his assets while thinking, there must be people in the city wealthier than we are. I still don't have enough. During the day, he felt as if heavy stones were weighing him down. At night, he could not sleep well, as he constantly feared theft, loss, and how other people might surpass him. If a Jia family member heard of precious fabrics somewhere else, they would look upon their clothes as being too common. If they heard of someone buying something new, they would find what they owned as being too old. In this way, they often spend their days sighing and lamenting. The Yi family was much more ordinary. In their small home, they had much fewer basic belongings. In their courtyard, they grew some vegetables and a few fruit trees. In the morning, they would get up early to water the plants and harvest vegetables. In the evening, they would gather around a small table for meals. As they enjoyed dinner, they often said, "Today's vegetables are especially fresh and tasty." When it was hot in summertime, the husband and wife would bring chairs to the doorway to catch the breeze and watch the children play. When it was cold in winter, they would huddle around the stove, roasting sweet potatoes, feeling good about staying warm and cozy. Someone once asked Mr. Yi, the husband, "Your home is so simple. What? Don't you find life a little bitter?" He thought for a moment and replied, "Heaven does not owe me a single ray of sunlight, nor does the earth owe me a bite of food. My body is able to move. My family is safe. My stomach is full, and I can sleep soundly at night. In my heart, I already feel wealthy." One year, mountain floods and torrential rains arrived. The rushing water damaged the Jia family home, swept away some of the grains, and destroyed 2 of their carriages. Mr. Jia wept uncontrollably for the loss, even though his remaining wealth was still far greater than most people's. He said, "It's all over. My life's work is gone. How can I go on living?" He felt as poor as a beggar. His face was clouded with misery. The same flood also washed away the vegetable garden belonging to the Yi family. Mr. Yi sighed when he looked at the damage, but then said, "We'll eat less of our own harvest this year and go to the mountains to gather wild greens instead. The house is still here. Everyone is safe. So we will just plant again for next year." That night, he gathered with his family around a small table, as usual. They all said with gratitude, "Despite such heavy rain, we can still sit here and eat a hot meal. How wonderful." Although their possessions had decreased, they remained peaceful and at ease, sleeping soundly, resting deeply. The end. The Tao. The Jia family had much money, but always felt it was insufficient. So the wealthier they became, the poorer they felt. The Yi family had little, but they were always happy and appreciative of what they possessed. So despite their simplicity, they always felt abundant. So we must ask, what is wealth? What is poverty? The villagers thought of the Jia family as wealthy, as rich, and the Yi family as modest or poor. This is the usual perspective of the world. It uses quantity as measurement. More must be better. Less must not be quite as good. In the human heart, this is not always the case. There, what truly matters is the difference in feeling the never-ending desire for more, or the satisfaction of already having more than enough. This is the Tao perspective. Its measure is not in counting money and objects, but in happiness and fulfillment. This doesn't mean we cannot or should not work on improving our lives. Rather, it means that in every moment, we should first acknowledge what we already possess without letting the heart fall into the pit of greed. For that is a bottomless pit. To have much but be discontent while surrounded by riches, that is an empty void. Poverty in the truest sense. To have little but feel content, able to appreciate a cup of tea, a bowl of soup, a harmonious family gathering, or a peaceful night's sleep. That sense of being grounded, that inner freedom, is what true wealth is all about. So that is our story and the Tao. In conclusion, we go back to the writing of Lao Tzu, who expressed it as, those who know contentment are wealthy. We are nearing the top of the hour, so we must go to summary for our talk today. Today's talk has been about the self and others. Our observation is that most people can see others better than themselves. As Jesus taught, they see others' faults while ignoring their own. Number 2, the primary requisite of Tao cultivation is self-awareness. It is especially important to be aware of your shortcomings, mistakes, and limits. Number 3, most people place too much focus on defeating others. So they are engaged in and become obsessed with competition. They compare themselves against others. And even those who, on the surface level, pretend to be humble, you can see the comparison when they, for instance, compare the accomplishments of their children to the children of others. That is competition by proxy. Number 4, the self is the most formidable opponent of all. Can you overcome the self when it knows your every weakness? This is why those who can manage such a feat, overcome themselves, are truly powerful, just as those who really are aware of themselves are truly clear or wise. Share the Tao. For easy access to Tao resources, visit my website, dereklin.com. There, you can click on links and see everything listed, such as Taoism.net, information about the Tao and this meeting. Our Facebook community, a place to discuss the Tao with fellow seekers. Our YouTube channel, recordings of all our previous meetings. My Amazon author page, books and audiobooks for further exploration. You can go directly to this page at dereklin.com/links. When you see the benefits of the Tao in your life, share your experience through comments in Facebook and share these resources with friends who may also benefit. If you find my books or audiobooks helpful, please post your reviews on Amazon to guide others to the Tao. If you have connections to prisoners interested in the Tao, contact me through Derek Lin Books on Facebook, and I will send my books to them free of charge. This is the path that I am on, so I can say sharing the Tao has transformed my life in incredible ways. I would like to invite you to come along. Let us travel together on the path in the journey of life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.